You have tried to reprogram your subconscious mind before. An affirmation repeated in the mirror, a vision board taped above the desk, a note on the phone read every morning with as much conviction as you could manufacture before coffee. None of it held. Not because you did it wrong, because you were never doing the thing that actually works. This is the mechanism, older than any of the names currently attached to it. William Walker Atkinson described it in full, decades before the words reprogramming or subconscious rewiring entered popular language. He called it suggestion, not motivation, not affirmation repeated through gritted teeth. Suggestion, a specific mental transaction with specific conditions that either occurs correctly or does not occur at all. Here is what almost everyone gets wrong. They believe reprogramming happens through the conscious mind, through willpower, through saying a sentence enough times while fully awake, fully alert, fully aware that they are trying to convince themselves of something. The subconscious does not respond to that. It responds to a different set of conditions entirely. Repetition, emotional charge, and a receptive state, the part almost no one is taught. Not the state of a person straining to believe something, the state closer to the one just before sleep or just after waking, when the analytical mind has not fully engaged, when the gatekeeper has stepped back. That gatekeeper has a name in Atkinson's work, the objective mind, the reasoning, arguing, skeptical layer that questions everything you consciously try to tell yourself. When you affirm something at your desk, wide awake, that gatekeeper is standing at full attention. It hears the affirmation. It compares it to the evidence already stored, the version of you that has existed for years, and it rejects the mismatch, instantly, silently, before the words even finish leaving your mouth. This is why the affirmation felt hollow. Not because you did not believe hard enough, because you were speaking to a mind that was still guarding the door. Real reprogramming requires the door to be open. That is not mysticism, it is structure, and it explains something you have likely noticed but never named. Why the thought that arrives right before sleep, or the mood you wake up already inside of, seems to shape the entire day that follows. More than any amount of conscious planning ever does. You are not choosing that mood. It was suggested to something with no defense against it. Now hold this next to your own life for a moment. 35, 40, 45 years old, decades of conscious effort, decades of trying to think your way into a different result, while the actual mechanism that determines your results was never addressed. Not once. Not because no one told you it existed, because almost no one explains it correctly. Most explanations stop at your subconscious controls 95% of your behavior and leave it there. A statistic repeated for effect, with no instruction on what to actually do about it. This video is not that. This is the structure, the actual conditions under which suggestion is accepted, and the reason every failed attempt at change in your life followed the same avoidable pattern. Picture the version of this that has already happened to you, not once, many times. You decide with real conviction that something is going to change. The decision feels solid. You can feel the shift in your own posture as you make it. For a few days, it holds. Then a Tuesday arrives that looks like every other Tuesday. By the second week, you are back inside the exact pattern you swore you had already left. You call this a lack of discipline. It is not. It is the objective mind losing a negotiation it was never equipped to win, against a structure installed decades earlier, reinforced thousands of times since, never once directly addressed. Look at the specific rooms where this repeats. Money. You have watched it arrive and leave, in a pattern that feels almost choreographed. A raise appears. Within months, the spending finds it. A windfall appears. Within weeks, an equally sized expense meets it. You called this bad luck. For so long, the word stopped feeling like an explanation and started feeling like a diagnosis. It is neither. It is a subconscious set point, a figure absorbed early from a household, a comment, an atmosphere of scarcity or chaos around money before you were conscious enough to question it. The set point does not care about your current income. It only knows the number it was trained to return to. Relationships. You have noticed, if you are honest, that a particular type of person keeps appearing in your life wearing different faces, different name, different city, same underlying dynamic, the same distance, the same eventual disappointment, the same feeling of being almost chosen. You have wondered if this is coincidence. It is not. The subconscious does not seek out a person. It seeks out a frequency it already recognizes, one it learned to associate with love or attention or worth long before you had any say in the matter. Work. You have built genuine skill. Colleagues with less ability have moved past you into rooms you have not yet entered. You tell yourself it is timing, politics, luck. Sometimes it is. But look closer at the pattern across years, not one event. Notice how often you pull back at the exact moment visibility increases. Notice the sentence that appears right before an opportunity to be seen. Not yet. Someone else is more qualified. Wait for the next one. That sentence is not new. You did not invent it this year. It was suggested to you long ago by someone or something that needed you to stay smaller than you actually were. The body keeps its own version of this record. Notice the specific hour you tend to lose momentum. Mid-afternoon, almost every day, at a nearly identical time. Notice the tension that lives in a particular part of your body. They're so long, you no longer register it as tension. You call it just how you are. It is not how you are. It is what was suggested to your body before your body could object. Now notice the moment right before sleep, the last thought that crosses your mind before you lose consciousness of it, a worry, a rehearsal of a conversation gone wrong, a specific fear about money or time or relevance. That thought is not neutral. It is the final instruction given to the exact part of your mind that has no gatekeeper standing at the door. The part that is, at that hour, most receptive to suggestion in the entire 24-hour cycle. Most people hand it worry. Then wonder the next morning why the day arrived already heavy. This is not a haunted process. It is a mechanical one. Whatever enters in that undefended window gets planted with almost no resistance and grows in the dark for the following 16 hours before you ever notice its shape, older, quieter, more consistent than any conscious plan you have ever made. That is the subconscious, not a metaphor for willpower. An actual structure with actual entry points, most of which have been left completely unguarded for your entire adult life. One more room, and this is the one most people avoid looking at directly. If there are children in your life, yours, or close enough to feel like yours, watch closely the next time you hear yourself speak to them. Notice the exact sentence. Notice the tone underneath it. There is a real chance you just heard a voice that was not originally yours. A parent's voice, a grandparent's voice, delivered now through your mouth decades later to a child who has no idea they are receiving a suggestion first planted before you could walk. You told yourself years ago that you would do this differently, and in the calm moments, you do. Then a specific kind of tired arrives, the tired that lowers the gate. And the old sentence comes out anyway, in the old tone, landing exactly where it landed on you. This is not a character flaw. This is the mechanism operating precisely as designed through the one door that was never given permission to close. If you want to keep seeing the actual structure behind your own mind laid out this precisely, subscribe. These conversations are not isolated. They build, one mechanism at a time. One more room worth naming before this goes deeper. There is the version of this that arrives at 2 in the morning, uninvited, the math you do without meaning to. How many years since you were the age your parents are now? How many years until you are? How much of what you meant to build is still theoretical? You scroll past someone your age who appears to have already arrived, the business, the body, the visible ease, and something tightens in your chest that has no name you are willing to say out loud. You call it comparison. It is closer to recognition, a subconscious registering correctly that a different frequency was installed in that other life, and an entirely different one was installed in yours. At an age neither of you were present enough to consent to it. None of this was your fault, and all of it has been running, unexamined, for longer than you have been an adult. Now the structure becomes more specific, because naming a pattern is not the same as understanding why it holds so completely. What has been described so far are behaviors. Money returning to a set point, a familiar type of partner. Retreat at the exact moment visibility increases. A parent's sentence arriving through your own mouth. Behavior is only the surface layer. Beneath every one of those behaviors is something more precise and more difficult to face directly. An identity that was assembled before you had any authority over its construction, and that has been rehearsed so many times since that it no longer feels like a role. It feels like you, repeated, confirmed. Mistaken for identity. This is the distinction Atkinson returns to again and again, though he uses older language for it. The subconscious does not merely store facts, it stores a self, a working model of who you are, what you are capable of, what you are permitted to have, and what belongs to someone else's life instead of yours. Every day, without exception, you perform a small ceremony that confirms this model. You do not experience it as a ceremony. You experience it as simply being realistic, being yourself, knowing your limits. But watch the mechanism from the outside for a moment. An opportunity appears that exceeds the model's current permissions. A flicker of possibility rises, genuine, brief, undefended. Then the model reasserts itself, usually through a thought that sounds entirely reasonable. This is not really for someone like me. People like me do not get that. I will pursue that once I am more ready. The opportunity is not rejected because it was wrong. It is rejected because it did not match the file already on record. Here is where the mechanism becomes exact. That model of you is not passive. It does not simply sit in storage, waiting to be consulted. It is active, moment to moment, functioning as a filter placed over the entire world. It decides, before you consciously notice, what you will pay attention to. Walk into a room and notice how quickly you locate the one detail that confirms what you already expect to find. The one unimpressed face in a room of interested ones. The one flaw in an otherwise solid piece of work. The one signal that things will go the way they usually go. You did not choose to notice that detail first. It was selected for you by a system trained for years to find exactly that kind of evidence, because evidence is how the model stays intact. This is why change through willpower alone fails so reliably. Willpower operates on behavior. It can force a single action against the model's resistance for a day, a week, occasionally a month, but the model itself remains untouched, still filtering, still selecting confirming evidence, still waiting for the moment your attention lapses, so it can pull the behavior back into alignment with what it has on file. You are not fighting a habit. You are fighting a self that has been rehearsed for decades and has gotten extremely good at the performance. Rehearsed, not real, not fixed, not just who you are, not in the way that phrase implies something permanent and outside your reach. Rehearsed means it was built through repetition, which means it can be unbuilt through a different repetition, delivered under the right conditions to the part of the mind that actually accepts new instruction. This is not encouragement. It is a mechanical fact, and mechanical facts do not care whether you find them comfortable. Now, the part almost no one wants to hear because it is not sold as part of the package. Reprogramming the subconscious is not a gentle process of adding something new on top of what already exists. It requires something to be removed first. Specifically, it requires the identity currently occupying that position to be dismantled, piece by piece, before a new one can be installed. This has a cost, and the cost is not metaphorical. The old identity, however uncomfortable, is familiar. It has predictable furniture. It knows exactly how each day will disappoint or satisfy you. And there is a strange, unspoken relief in that predictability, even when the predictable outcome is one you claim to hate. The new identity has no furniture yet. For a period longer than anyone wants to admit, replacing the old pattern will feel worse than keeping it. Not because the new direction is wrong, because the objective mind, the same gatekeeper discussed earlier, will read the unfamiliar as danger and will produce every argument available to return you to the version of you it already recognizes. This is the exact point where almost everyone stops, not because the method failed, because the discomfort arrived on schedule, was mistaken for evidence that something was wrong, and the old identity was allowed back in, through the door that discomfort had briefly opened. The people who complete this process are not the ones who feel the least resistance. They are the ones who correctly identify the resistance as a sign the old structure is finally being disturbed, not a sign to abandon the attempt. Consider what happens if none of this is addressed. Not a collapse, nothing so dramatic. There is rarely a single dramatic ending to a life that never replaced its subconscious structure. There is only repetition, continuing quietly for years that pass faster than they used to, silent, repeatable. mistaken for simply how life is. Another year at the income that never quite moves past its set point, no matter which strategy is layered on top of it this time. Another version of the same relationship pattern, arriving in a new person, wearing a new face, delivering the same familiar disappointment on a slightly delayed schedule. Another sentence passed to a child, in the exact tone it was passed to you, becoming their subconscious structure the way it became yours. 5 years from the day you are watching this, the specifics may look different. A different job title, a different city possibly, a different name attached to the relationship. The structure underneath will be the same structure operating today, simply given more time to prove how consistent it actually is. This is the part that rarely gets said plainly. The cost of not replacing the old identity is not punishment. It is continuation. You will not be struck down for staying the same. You will simply keep receiving the results the current structure was built to produce at the pace it has always produced them. While conscious effort is spent, year after year, trying to outplan a system that was never listening to plans in the first place. 10 years is not a long time. You already know this. You can name, without effort, what you were doing 10 years before today. It arrives instantly in memory, closer than it should feel. 10 years from now will arrive with the same speed. The only real variable is which structure is running the mind that meets that date. So the question is not whether you have time. Everyone technically has time. Until the specific day, they no longer do. And that day never announces itself in advance. The actual question is simpler and considerably harder to keep avoiding. When does the replacement begin? Not when you feel ready. Readiness is a report generated by the very structure you are attempting to replace. It will never volunteer that the moment has arrived. Its entire function is continuation, not disruption, not when circumstances align. Circumstances follow identity. They do not precede it. Waiting for the outside to shift first reverses a mechanism that has only ever run in one direction. Not next year. Next year will be assembled, hour by hour, from whatever is repeated today, in exactly the receptive states already described, the minutes before sleep, the minutes after waking, the unguarded moments in between. Next year is not a fresh page. It is an extension of this evening's habits, printed forward. There is no version of later that is not simply today, postponed and relabeled. The structure does not pause while you wait for a better time to begin dismantling it. It keeps building. Today, while you read this sentence, there is a specific moment right now that matters more than the rest of this video combined. Not the moment you finish watching, the moment tonight, right before sleep, when the gatekeeper steps back and whatever you hand your mind gets planted without resistance. Tonight, you have a choice about what enters that window. Most nights it happens by accident. Whatever worry was loudest during the day simply walks in uninvited and gets planted anyway. Tonight, you know the door exists. What you place at that door is no longer an accident. It is a decision you are equipped to make correctly for the first time. That is where this actually begins. Not in a program, not in a course, not in a future version of today. In the specific 60 seconds before you lose consciousness tonight. Comment this: I see the structure now. Not as a promise to change, as recognition. The first accurate observation of a system that has been running unexamined for most of your life. Recognition is the only entry requirement. Everything else follows from an accurate look, repeated at the actual mechanism, rather than another attempt to out-effort a self that was never built by effort in the first place. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their results. Few ever go one layer deeper and replace what has been quietly producing those results the whole time. And until that layer is addressed directly at the door where it actually operates, no strategy placed on top of it will hold for long.